First story. So, this happened a few months ago, and I still can't fully wrap my head around how quickly things escalated. I'm not someone who typically gets involved in drama, but this was the kind of situation that took on a life of its own. All because of a single wrong text message. It all started on a quiet Tuesday evening. I was at home, unwinding after a long day at work, scrolling through my phone like I always do. That's when I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. The message said something like, "We're meeting at 7 p.m., right? Can't wait to see you." Now, I'm no stranger to spam texts or wrong numbers, so I just replied, "Sorry, wrong number." Simple, straightforward. But then I got another message almost immediately, "Nice try, Josh. You're not getting out of this one. I'll be there at 7. The thing is, my name isn't Josh. I figured whoever it was would realize their mistake and drop it. But nope. I sent another message back, more insistent this time, "Seriously, you've got the wrong number. I'm not Josh." Silence for a while. Then, my phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. I hesitated for a second. Who even calls people these days? But curiosity got the better of me, so I picked up. "Josh, stop messing around," a woman's voice snapped at me before I could even say hello. "I know it's you. We need to talk. You can't avoid this forever." At this point, I was genuinely confused. "Look," I said, trying to sound as calm as possible, "I'm not Josh. I don't know who you are, and I think you've made a mistake." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then she hung up. I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. The next day, things got weirder. I started receiving texts from the same number, but now they were angrier, more aggressive. "You're a coward," one said. "I'll find you. We need to settle this." Another said, "You can't hide from me forever, Josh." I tried blocking the number, but the texts kept coming from different numbers. Whoever this person was, she was relentless. It wasn't just texts, either. I started getting calls from unknown numbers throughout the day. When I'd pick up, there would be silence, then the sound of breathing before the caller hung up. I was genuinely creeped out. On the third day, I woke up to find an envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a handwritten note that said, "You can't ignore me. 7 p.m. Be ready." No signature. No other details. Just that single sentence. At this point, I was freaked out. How did they know where I lived? Who was this person? And why did they think I was this Josh guy? I called the police, but they didn't take me seriously. "It's probably just a prank," the officer on the phone said, sounding bored. "Block the number and move on. There's not much we can do about a few text messages." But it wasn't just text messages anymore. Things were escalating fast, and I had no idea what to do. By the end of the day, I had received another note, this time taped to my car windshield. It said, "I'm watching you." I started to feel paranoid. Every time I left my apartment, I'd look around, scanning the area for anyone suspicious. I even started taking different routes to work, hoping to shake off anyone who might be following me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always watching. Then came Friday. The worst day of all. I was coming home from work, exhausted and stressed out from a week of this madness. When I got to my apartment, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. My heart dropped. I knew I'd locked it that morning. I pushed the door open slowly, and my apartment was a wreck. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, and things scattered everywhere. But what really terrified me was the message written on my living room wall in red marker, "You can't hide, Josh." That was it. I called the police again, but this time, they actually sent someone over. The officer took a statement and looked around the apartment, but there wasn't much they could do. There were no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. It was as if whoever had done this knew exactly what they were doing. I ended up staying with a friend for the weekend because I couldn't bear the thought of being in that apartment alone. Over the next couple of days, the text stopped. The call stopped. The note stopped. It was like the person had just vanished. By Monday, everything had gone quiet, and I was left wondering if it was all just some twisted prank. But I moved out of that apartment the following month, just to be safe. To this day, I have no idea who that woman was or why she thought I was Josh. Part of me wonders if it was all a case of mistaken identity, or if it was something more sinister. Either way, I never want to experience anything like that again. Second story. I swear, this is the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened to me, and it's still hard for me to believe it actually went down the way it did. I mean, who accidentally crashes a wedding and ends up being the best man? Apparently, me. So, a little background before I dive into the madness. I had just moved to a new city for a job, didn't know many people except for a few co-workers. Naturally, when Friday night rolled around, I wanted to go out, maybe meet some new faces, get a feel for the place. My buddy Jake, who I'd met through work, suggested we hit up this local bar that was supposed to be the place for live music and drinks. I didn't have any better ideas, so we went. When we got there, the place was packed. The vibe was great, though everyone seemed to be in a good mood, and there was this live band playing 90s covers that really got the crowd going. After a couple of drinks, Jake got a call and had to leave, something about his girlfriend being sick. So, I was left on my own. No big deal, I figured I'd grab another beer and maybe strike up a conversation with someone. That's when I noticed a group of people in the back of the bar, all dressed to the nines. It wasn't your typical bar crowd. The women were in fancy dresses, and the guys were in suits. There was a buzz of excitement around them. I assumed it was some kind of bachelorette party or something, but it looked fun, and they seemed pretty friendly. One guy saw me looking over and waved me to come join them. I hesitated for a second, but what the hell, right? I walked over, and he handed me a drink like I was an old friend. "Bro, you're here," he said, clapping me on the back. I had no idea who this guy was, but he seemed genuinely thrilled that I had showed up. I decided to just roll with it. Maybe Jake had mentioned me to someone from his circle? Turns out, the group was there for a pre-wedding celebration. The guy who had waved me over was Tom, the groom. He was in high spirits, a little tipsy, but in that happy, I'm getting married tomorrow, kind of way. I congratulated him, of course, and we ended up talking for a while. He was easy to get along with, and before I knew it, I had become part of their group for the night. Everything was going great, drinks flowing, laughs being shared. At one point, Tom's best man, Dave, came over and introduced himself. Super nice guy, also a bit hammered. He even jokingly said something like, "Hey man, if I'm too drunk tomorrow, you can take over as best man." I laughed it off, thinking it was just bar talk. Fast forward to the next morning. I wake up with a slight hangover and a text from an unknown number, "Hope you're ready. Wedding's at 4. You're gonna kill it, man." Kill what? I stared at the text for a good minute before it clicked. Dave wasn't joking. Or maybe he was, but something had clearly gone wrong. I called the number back, and sure enough, it was Tom. He sounded half panicked, half excited. Apparently, Dave had gotten way too drunk the night before, and now, they couldn't find him. He was MIA, and Tom, in his slightly hungover wisdom, had decided that since I had been there and bonded with the group, I was the next best option. "You're serious?" I asked, my voice cracking a bit. "Bro, you're the best." "I can't do this without a best man," he replied. I could have said no. I should have said no. But Tom sounded so desperate, and for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to let him down. So, I found myself saying, "All right, man. I'll do it." The next few hours were a blur. I rushed to get a suit. Luckily, I had one with me from an interview I'd done earlier that week, and by some miracle, I was standing at the wedding venue by 3:30 p.m., just in time to meet Tom and the other groomsmen. Tom looked relieved when he saw me. "You saved me, dude," he said, hugging me like we'd been friends for years. I'd never been a best man before. Hell, I'd never even been to a wedding this fancy. There were at least 100 guests, all impeccably dressed, and here I was, some random guy who had crashed the groom's pre-wedding party by accident and now had to give a speech. The ceremony went off without a hitch, though. Tom's bride, Sarah, was absolutely stunning, and the whole thing had this fairy tale vibe. After the vows, it was time for the reception, and, of course, the best man speech. I was sweating bullets as I stood up to give the toast. What the hell was I supposed to say? I didn't even really know Tom. But I took a deep breath, raised my glass, and started talking. I went with a mix of humor and heartfelt words, trying to keep it light. I threw in some generic "Tom's a great guy" lines and talked about how lucky Sarah was to have found someone like him. To my surprise, the guests loved it. They laughed at the right moments, clapped when I toasted to the happy couple, and I actually felt like I had pulled it off. After the speech, Tom came over, grinning from ear to ear. "Dude, that was amazing. You killed it," he said. He introduced me to a bunch of his friends and family as the guy who saved the day, and for the rest of the night, I felt like some kind of celebrity. By the end of the night, Dave finally showed up, still drunk, still apologizing, but by then, the wedding was nearly over, and no one seemed to care anymore. Tom was married, the party was winding down, and I had officially gone from random bar dude to wedding hero. Looking back, I still can't believe how it all went down. I mean, what are the odds of walking into a random bar, meeting a groom, and ending up being his best man the next day? Life's weird like that sometimes, I guess. But hey, now I've got a killer story to tell, and Tom? Well, we still keep in touch. Turns out, he's actually a pretty cool guy. Third story. Alright, buckle up because this is one of those "how is this even real" kind of stories, but I swear it happened exactly the way I'm about to tell you. Let me set the scene. So, a few months ago, I'm going about my day, pretty uneventful, when my buddy Luke texts me asking if I can pick him up from the airport. His flight was delayed, and he couldn't get an Uber at that hour, so of course, I said yes. Being the good friend that I am, I head over, no big deal. Luke lives in this high-rise apartment building downtown, one of those super fancy places where you need a key card to get in and the elevators are so smooth, you barely feel them move. I'd been to his place a few times, so I knew the drill. I get to the building, buzz myself in, and head straight to the elevators. The building's got like 30 floors or something, and Luke's place is on the 23rd, so I'm preparing myself for a long ride up. The elevator dings, the doors slide open, and I step inside. Right as the doors are about to close, I hear someone shout, "Hold the door!" Naturally, I stick my arm out like a decent human being and hit the open button. And that's when I see her. Yup, my ex-girlfriend, Sarah, the one I hadn't seen in over a year, steps into the elevator with a guy I can only assume is her new boyfriend. Perfect, right? Just what you want when you're trapped in a small metal box for 23 floors, an awkward reunion with your ex. But hey, I'm an adult, she's an adult, and we can totally handle this like mature people. "Hey," she says, giving me that surprised but not really smile that you give someone when you run into them unexpectedly. The guy with her nods in my direction, and I do the same. "Hey," I manage to reply, doing my best to keep things casual, as if this isn't already spiraling into my personal nightmare. The doors close, and the elevator starts moving. I try to focus on my phone, scrolling aimlessly, while Sarah and her guy talk in low voices. I catch bits and pieces of their conversation. It's small talk, nothing significant, but I can't help feeling the tension. My heart's pounding a little, and I can feel sweat forming on the back of my neck. But I'm doing my best to act like I don't care. This is fine. Everything's fine. Then, around the 15th floor, the elevator jolts to a stop. And not a gentle stop. It's one of those sharp, sudden jerks that makes you feel like the cable's just snapped, and you're about to plummet to your death. We all look around, confused, and Sarah's new boyfriend, the guy who I now know is named Greg, presses the button for the next floor. Nothing happens. He presses it again. Still nothing. The three of us exchange glances, and Greg hits the emergency button, the one you're not really sure will do anything, but it feels like the responsible thing to do. A moment later, a crackly voice comes over the speaker. Elevator's stuck between floors. We're working on it. Please stay calm. Stay calm? Sure, that's easy to say when you're not trapped in an elevator with your ex and her new man. The first 10 minutes are awkward, but manageable. We try to make polite conversation, well, Sarah and Greg do. I mostly nod and throw in a yeah or aha when appropriate. They talk about their weekend plans, and I try to look like I'm not completely dying inside. But after about 20 minutes, the polite small talk runs out. Greg tries pressing more buttons, even though it's obvious we're not going anywhere. The tension is thick, and it's getting hotter in the elevator by the second. I can feel the awkwardness weighing down on us, and we're all just waiting for something, anything, to happen. At around the 45-minute mark, Sarah finally breaks the silence. So, how have you been? She asks, trying to sound casual, but there's an edge to it. I shrug. Good. You? Good, yeah. Things are good, she says, glancing at Greg. I try not to roll my eyes. Of course things are good, she's with her new boyfriend, and I'm stuck in an elevator with them like some bad rom-com. Greg, bless his soul, tries to keep things from getting weirder. He starts talking about how he works in finance or something, and honestly, I tune out most of it. I nod and smile, but my brain's in survival mode, just waiting for this nightmare to end. An hour goes by. Then 2. At some point, I sit down on the floor because standing in that tiny box for hours isn't doing anyone any favors. Sarah and Greg follow suit, and now we're all just sitting there, staring at the walls, waiting for the building maintenance team to figure out what's wrong. At around the 2.5 hour mark, Greg starts pacing. He's clearly more stressed than he's letting on, which I get. Being stuck in an elevator is bad enough without the added tension of exes and new relationships. Finally, he sighs and says, "You know, this is kind of crazy. We might be here a while." "Yeah, no kidding," I say, trying not to sound as frustrated as I am. And then, out of nowhere, Sarah starts laughing. Not like a little chuckle, but full-on laughing. Greg and I look at each other, both confused, and then she says, "This is so ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, what are the odds?" At first, I don't know how to respond. But then, I feel it too, the absurdity of the whole situation. It's like something straight out of a sitcom, and it's so ridiculous that I can't help but laugh too. Soon enough, Greg joins in, and for a few moments, the tension melts away as we're all just sitting there, laughing at how ridiculous our lives are. Eventually, after nearly 3 hours, the elevator jerks back to life. We all stand up, bracing ourselves as it slowly moves toward the next floor. When the doors finally open, we step out into the hallway, and for a second, there's an awkward pause. "Well, that was something," Sarah says, smiling awkwardly. "Yeah, it definitely was," I reply. Greg shakes my hand. "Nice meeting you, man. Hopefully under less crazy circumstances next time." "Yeah, you too," I say, and with that, they head off toward their apartment, and I make my way to Luke's. As I walked away, I couldn't help but think about how weird life can be sometimes. I mean, who expects to get stuck in an elevator with their ex and her new boyfriend? But in a strange way, it felt like some kind of closure, awkward, uncomfortable closure, but closure nonetheless. So, yeah. That's the story of how I spent 3 hours in an elevator with my ex and her new boyfriend. And while it wasn't the most pleasant experience, at least I got a good story out of it.